Any conversation about reimagining and restructuring the Episcopal Church has to take leadership into account. Any conversation about leadership in the Episcopal Church has to acknowledge that we need to expand the number of voices and cultures, simply the range of leadership styles that we say yes to, that we are willing to trust and to vest authority in. I rely on Christopher DeRising for the wisdom on this topic. I studied with him at Episcopal Divinity School back in the day, and Christopher used to talk about the gospel flower. He talked about this gospel flower and the idea that it has many petals, and that if any of the petals are missing, you will not see this gospel flower in bloom. You will not see it in all of its vibrant color and life. I think that leadership is the same way. It's actually a completely Anglican approach to say that you have to have all of the voices at the table in order to get to what's true, what's real, in order to get to the heart of the gospel, the beautiful gospel flower in bloom. So we need to have these various voices. We need to have comprehensiveness. We need to know that my hold on truth, my hold on reality, my way of leading not only isn't the only way, it can't be the only way that we go forward as a church. If any truth is missing, if any perspective, any leader is missing, then our understanding is partial. And we need to go back, we need to expand, we need to listen more deeply. We need to broaden the welcome and the table. We need all the voices. So where does that intersect with the reality of the Episcopal Church? The fact is that as a church, we have that Anglican tradition of comprehensiveness. We also have this thing called empire. And where that leaves us is with a tradition, a centuries-old tradition of having a particular way of leading, a particular group of people leading. And they get to place that dominant narrative, that dominant style, that dominant culture at the center and have everyone else organize themselves around it. That model is in our DNA, just like the model of comprehensiveness. The nature of empire is that it's all about standardization. It's all about submission to some external authority, and often a distant authority. Even though the Episcopal Church left its association with England, officially back in the 1700s, we didn't leave behind that kind of dominant relationship with non-dominant cultures. So you end up, at least I end up, back at Christopher DeRising and wondering, so how do you take a church that has for so much of its history wanted, and not only wanted, but been rooted in this model of exercising leadership by the few, leadership by the dominant culture? How do you take a church rooted in that and begin to morph into a church that expresses the beauty, the fullness of that gospel flower? I'm curious about that. I want to see us grow into that. And I want to see how women lead differently. How it is that when women come and truly bring the experiences that have shaped our lives, how that authority, that leadership is different and makes for a different church. I want to see how gay and lesbian people and bisexual and transgendered people's experiences in communities and in church train them to see the world just differently enough that maybe they understand the gospel in ways that I could not have imagined. I want to see the way that Asian and Asian American people's experiences in the world and in the church bring a completely different way of listening to and honoring the gifts of others. I want to see the way that other Black people, the way that poor people, the way that younger people, the way that all of these different groups' leadership sits alongside the leadership of more dominant groups, so that we can truly live into the mission of God in a way that you simply can't when it's one group defining the narrative. I'm fully aware that making a shift like this is a dramatic move for the Episcopal Church. But I'm also, I'm grateful because of the model of leaders like Bill Countryman and M.R. Ridley, who wrote the book Gifted by Otherness. I remember reading this many years ago and saying, that's it. In this book, they talk about otherness, about difference, not as something we simply tolerate, as something that we say, well, it's nice that you could come in, but we seek that otherness, and we seek it as a gift. We seek the perspective of groups who have been on the margins, and again, not just say to them, it's time, you can come in as long as you're going to assimilate and be like the rest of the dominant church culture, but instead say, come in, show us how you do what you do, because we need to know that now. We need to be changed by your gifts, and we as church will share what we have. That gift of otherness defines the kind of church that I want to be a part of, and it's the kind of church that I believe the Episcopal Church was born to be here in America and beyond. So let's dream that church together. Let's dream a church where authority is shared with various groups, including groups who have been on that margin, groups who would have been other, but are now at home. And let's dream of a church that does that work, not because it's the politically correct thing to do, but because it's the dream of God. Do it because you want to see that gospel flower in full bloom.